when I got to Washington, I was San Jose Mercury News was my home paper, and so I covered the Silicon Valley. That meant something very different. It meant startups. It meant new ideas. It didn't
Hmm.
mean Big Brother, you know.
Hmm.
Uh, and but to that from that day to this, one thing I think is consistent, and you talk about this in your book, Rethinking Economic Growth, which is that most new jobs, and this has been true decade after decade, are either formed by small businesses or startups. And that's not necessarily the exact same thing, but it's close, right? That's still true, isn't it?
Still true. So what's interesting is that when we look at job growth, two of three private sector jobs come from small business, and I was fascinated to see that. The other thing that's fascinating about these jobs, the jobs data, is that half the total workforce comes from small businesses. It's just remarkable.
One thing that I wanted to ask you about this was about the romance of small business. In a sense, there's sort of again, my dad was an entrepreneur, so I grew up in a family where we talked about business stuff around the table every night. And really, as soon as I was able, I spent 10 years sort of learning the craft of television, and then went out and started my own business. Have we lost any of that all? Do young people still want to start small businesses? Is that something that that's still sort of part of the American dream, I guess, if you will, or are we losing that?
So I think we're losing it, and I think it's a mistake. So for all of us listening today and beyond, so when we turn on the business channels, what do we hear about? We hear about NVIDIA, Microsoft, Google, Apple, the big eight, and they drive a large part of stock market performance. But the issue is when you look at actual job growth and you look at economic growth, so small businesses drive almost half of economic growth in the country. It's very powerful. And, small business has been part of the fabric of American history. Thomas Jefferson and
Mm.
Benjamin Franklin were entrepreneurs and small business owners, and it's gone on through 250 years. Uh,
I'm glad to hear you say that, Dan. Benjamin Franklin, with his newspaper, did what we did at Real Clear Politics. He was the first. He brought in multiple viewpoints. I
yes,
don't I don't know why.
yes.
I don't know. So few people left to do it. He would have different arguments from different people on the pages of his newspaper. Dan, let me ask you. So you have some of this in the book, and I look, I want people to read the book. That's one of the reasons we're doing this. I won't lie. This book, but give us a few ideas of what Congress can do to reinvigorate small business, strengthen small business, and I'm not saying let Wall Street and the big companies
Right.
take care of themselves, but let's talk about entrepreneurs. What could Congress do to reinstill some of this ethic that Andy's talking about?
So the answer is that both political parties need to embrace the power of small business in their communities. What I noted as I was doing the research and then conducting 50 hours worth of interviews for the book is that both political parties do a great job of talking about the romance of small business, but then when it comes to delivering legislatively, not so good. What I heard from the small business owners was as follows: we need certainty. We need certainty. We need certainty in our laws. We need certainty in our regulations. Instead of having a 4 or 5 year window where there's 100% write-off for plants and equipment, make it permanent. Uh, and develop a set of regulations that can be scaled down for small business. Why have a one-size-fits-all approach on regulations for large companies and small companies? It's far more expensive for small companies to do it. So I think what Congress can do is create certainty and really create a carve-out situation where small businesses must comply, but comply in a certain environment that it doesn't cost them an arm and two legs.
I've always found or thought in running my business, I really just want to be left alone. That's what I wanted more than anything else from the government. And there were always these 100 little ways,
Yeah.
and it seemed like there was never an understanding, I felt, from the bureaucrats that when they asked for information or when they required something, the amount of time it took, the amount of time I spent, even now, on my taxes is just an incredible waste of time and energy and resources that I would much rather be using that time trying to build my business, employ people,
Mhm.
put out a good product, whatever it is. So, I mean, what about that? What about the government just leaving us the hell alone?
Well, that would be a great start. Again, what was interesting in the 50 hours worth of interviews is hearing about the consultants they had to hire and the expense that they had to go through to comply with regulations. So, what was fascinating to me in several instances is they said, in the last administration, there were a lot of regulations, and they said, "Do you have any idea what the cost of those was?" And I said, actually, I do, about $1.4 trillion in new regulations. And
Really?
they said, that seems right because we're drowning in paperwork, we're drowning in costs, and we're not able to focus on our customers, our employees, or our products and our businesses. And we want more time to do that.
Dan, let's, we'd be remiss if we didn't ask you. The book is Rethinking Economic Growth. Dan Varroney's the author, but what is AI going to just throw a monkey wrench in all of this? I'm already hearing from, Gen Z types who finding it harder than they thought to get an entry-level job, that AI is going in and taking some of these jobs in fields that were once thought to be immune. What are your thoughts on that?
So, a phenomenal question. And there is a small business, a small manufacturer there in the wooden pallet industry. And this is a fascinating example and a true story, I might add. What he did is he brought in AI and automation, and he took his employees and he had them train. He paid to have them trained on it, and he kept his employees. What I will tell you is that the small businesses are very different. They have a paternalistic attitude toward their employees. They're part of the neighborhoods, they're part of the communities. And that's just one of several examples where they went out of the way to train people so they could keep them despite AI and automation and new technology.
Well, I'm going to ask the question that we should have started with, or I should have started, which is that, Dan, why'd you write the book, and what in your background sort of led you to undertake writing a book like this?
Uh, I love the question. So, as a young child growing up, my dad was a medical doctor. I lost him when I was very young. I was 18. He was only 53. But some of what he taught me is that the pen was mightier than the sword. If I wanted to influence, educate, shape opinion, that I needed to be able to write impactfully, effectively, and clearly on topics that really matter to people. And this is my second book. And the first book, similarly, I wanted to write something that was going to make the biggest difference. So the labor market is deteriorating rapidly. The answer is the small businesses can help with that. The answer is the small businesses are in every community. They play a substantial role in helping one another. They hire their neighbors, they hire college students in between semesters, and they really add to the quality of life and elevate the standard of living. I wanted to write something that was going to be a point of impact, not a point of distraction. And I was very excited about the idea of it. So that's one answer. The second answer is I worked for Newt Gingrich for 2.5 years. I ran his American Solutions Policy and Advocacy Organization. And Newt and I developed a small business tax plan. In addition, he and I wrote 10 or 11 op-eds together, and he invited me to write a chapter on small business in one of his best-selling books. And when I stopped working for Newt, the bug had bitten me on small business, and I saw this as an opportunity to continue the discussion and the dialogue on small business. I am incredibly passionate about this topic. I see it as a game change for the economy and for communities. I'm a former local elected official. I know how important communities are, and I'm all about small business and growing jobs.
Great. Well, Dan, thank you so much on behalf of all the small business operators out there. Thanks for writing the book. It's called Rethinking Economic Growth, How Small Business Can Help Consistently Grow the Economy. We'll be back with more Real Clear Politics right after these words.